Human biology contains a strange paradox. You cannot bite your own teeth, you cannot taste your own tongue, and without a mirror, you cannot look directly into your own eyes. The mechanism doing the observing can never fully observe itself. This creates a persistent mystery around the feeling we call I. For most of us, ordinary consciousness feels like a distinct center of awareness, operating somewhere just behind the eyes, staring out at an external world. Philosopher Alan Watts spent decades analyzing this sensation. He argued that the feeling of being a skin-encapsulated ego, a separate entity residing between your ears, is a societal convention. It is an idea we are taught rather than a physical reality. We treat the ego as if it were a physical organ, yet a surgeon would never find it. It exists as an abstract psychological construct, a convention as useful and as intangible as a line of longitude. This concept maps perfectly onto Western psychology, starting with Sigmund Freud's foundational model of the human mind. Look at this structural diagram of the psyche. On one side, primal biological drives, the id. On the other, the strict moral rules imposed by society, the superego. The ego forms as the permanent middleman, negotiating between the two to keep you functioning in the world. Modern neuroscience has identified a biological counterpart to this psychological mediator. It is a highly connected hub of regions in the brain known as the default mode network, or DMN. The DMN is incredibly demanding. Its regions consume up to 40% more energy than the rest of the brain. It burns all this metabolic fuel to perform a continuous task, suppressing entropy, or disorder, in the mind. It constantly filters out chaotic sensory data to maintain a rigid double narrative of reality. The self is an energy-intensive biological operating system. It categorizes threats, it predicts outcomes, and keeps the organism safe. But by filtering out so much of the raw data of reality, it also ensures the organism remains isolated from the wider universe. Crashing this operating system requires extreme catalysts. Clinical researchers observe this collapse during high-dose psychedelic therapies, following severe psychological trauma, or in practitioners undergoing intense, prolonged meditation. When the crash begins, the neurological failure is measurable. EEG readings show a sharp drop in alpha wave synchronization, the specific brain rhythm associated with self-reflection. The default mode network rapidly loses its grip. This network model shows the rigid, top-down hierarchy collapsing as individual nodes link up directly. The brain enters self-organized criticality, bordering order and disorder. Without the DMN suppressing information, the mind reverts to primary consciousness, a raw cognition mirroring the brain states of early infancy. The total systemic collapse of this brain hierarchy triggers the terrifying dissolution of self-identity. This is the physiological trigger for ego death. Studies from Binghamton University and Imperial College London break this intense psychological experience down into two distinct phases. The primary phase is termed ego loss. Subjects report a severe sense of depersonalization. The familiar first-person perspective completely evaporates. For a mind accustomed to control, watching its own boundaries dissolve feels indistinguishable from actual physical death. As the fear subsides, the secondary phase begins, unity. With the boundaries between the internal self and the external environment erased, subjects describe an overwhelming immersion into a larger whole. Psychiatrist Carl Jung argued that beneath our personal ego lies a collective unconscious, containing the shared psychological heritage of all humanity. When Freud's rigid ego is dismantled, this deeper reservoir floods the conscious mind with archetypal imagery. Ego death initially induces terror because it destroys the only identity we have ever known. Yet in the ashes of that identity, the isolation of the ego vanishes. The brain processes its connection to the external world without any filters. This leaves a massive question in the aftermath. If the I is entirely gone, what exactly remains to experience the universe? Psychologists refer to the resulting state as witness consciousness. It is a condition of pure awareness, devoid of judgment or personal preference. The camera is still perfectly capturing the scene, but the director has left the room. Ancient Eastern traditions mapped this state centuries ago. In Buddhism, the term is sunyata. While often translated as emptiness, Practitioners describe it as a state of infinite aliveness, unburdened by a rigid identity. Spiritual teacher Ram Dass famously summarized the lifelong pursuit of this state as nobody training. After spending a lifetime trying to be a somebody, the ultimate relief is realizing you don't actually have to be anyone. The void left by the ego stops being a terrifying abyss. It becomes a space of immense flexibility. You are liberated from the exhausting, self-imposed roles required to maintain a permanent persona in society. Ego death is a temporary state. The brain cannot operate indefinitely in high-entropy primary consciousness. Eventually, the default mode network reboots, and the conceptual I returns. Returning to ordinary consciousness is a biological requirement to function in human society. As Ram Dass reminded his students, you can realize the universe is perfectly one, but it's still your turn to do the dishes. The transformation occurs in how you relate to that returning identity. You can wear your personality, your chosen profession, and your history lightly. The ego shifts from being a prison to simply being a useful tool. Ultimate freedom comes from the visceral realization that the ego was an illusion all along. Rather than fixing or improving the self, liberation lies in knowing the internal narrator isn't a permanent entity.